Greenhaven shimmered under the early summer sun, a suburban oasis where oak-lined streets curled past homes with white picket fences. Lawns, meticulously trimmed, framed two-story houses, their porches alive with the hum of neighborly greetings. Children pedaled bicycles, their laughter blending with the chirping of sparrows, crafting a scene of idyllic calm. To any newcomer, Greenhaven was a promise of safety, community, and belonging, a place where dreams took root. Yet beneath its polished surface, subtle currents of judgment flowed, carried in the sidelong glances of those who held tradition above all else. On a radiant June morning, the Carter family arrived, their moving truck rumbling down Oakwood Lane. David Carter, a tall man with deep brown skin and a gaze that balanced warmth with quiet resolve, gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles betraying a hint of tension. Beside him sat Laura, his wife, her dark curls framing a face radiant with hope despite the long drive from their previous city. In the back seat, 14-year-old Emily scrolled through her phone, earbuds drowning out the world, while 9-year-old Liam pressed his face to the window, eyes wide with wonder at the unfamiliar sights. "This is it," David said, his voice steady but laced with anticipation. He pulled into the driveway of a charming two-story house, its wide front porch inviting, its backyard sprawling with potential for family memories. This home was a milestone, earned through years of hard work, especially for David, who had just been appointed Greenhaven's police chief, a role that carried both pride and the weight of scrutiny. Laura rested a hand on his arm, her smile infectious. "It's perfect, David. I can already picture barbecues out back, the kids playing, maybe even a little garden." Emily glanced up, her teenage skepticism sharp. "Barbecues? Mom, this place looks like it's full of retirees and boring lawns." "Don't be so quick to judge, Em," Laura replied, her tone gentle but firm. "We're building a new life here. You'll see." Liam pointed across the street, his voice curious. "Mom, Dad, someone's watching us." David followed his son's gaze. At the window of the house opposite, a lace curtain twitched, and a figure appeared briefly before vanishing. "Just a nosy neighbor," David said, forcing a grin to mask his unease. "Come on, let's get inside." The Carters stepped out of the truck, the summer air wrapping them in a warm embrace. Emily and Liam raced toward the front door, their laughter echoing as they claimed bedrooms and explored every corner of the house. David lingered outside, surveying their new home with a mix of gratitude and caution. As a black man stepping into a position of authority in a predominantly white town, he knew acceptance might come slowly, if at all. But he was determined, for Laura, for their children, for himself. Across the street, Margaret Hayes stood behind her lace curtains, her sharp eyes narrowing at the newcomers. At 70, Margaret was a pillar of Greenhaven, her silver hair pinned neatly, her blouses always pressed to perfection. She had lived here for 40 years, raising two sons who had long since moved away, and she saw herself as the neighborhood's unofficial gatekeeper. To her, Greenhaven was a sanctuary of order, where families adhered to a certain mold. Change was an unwelcome intruder, and the Carters, in her mind, were its embodiment. "Another bunch," she muttered, her lips thinning into a line of disapproval. She had heard about David Carter, the new police chief, but it did little to soften her disdain. They didn't belong, not in her Greenhaven. Over the next few days, the Carters began transforming their house into a home. Laura hung family photos, her teacher's instinct already envisioning the living room as a space for learning and laughter. David assembled furniture, his thoughts drifting to his new role, hoping to bridge divides in a town he barely knew. Emily sulked, texting friends from their old city, her reluctance to embrace Greenhaven palpable. Liam, ever curious, roamed the backyard, collecting pebbles and imagining grand adventures in this new place. They met a few neighbors during those first days. Thomas, an elderly widower with a kind smile, stopped by with a homemade apple pie, his welcome genuine and warm. The Patels, an Indian family who had moved to Greenhaven a year earlier, waved from their porch, their 2 children shy but curious about Emily and Liam. But others were less forthcoming, offering only curt nods or avoiding eye contact altogether. Laura noticed the coolness, her optimism tested, but she brushed it off with characteristic resilience. "They'll come around," she told David one evening, arranging a vase of wildflowers on the dining table. David wasn't so sure. He had caught Margaret Hayes's cold stares, her presence a constant shadow across the street. He had felt those kinds of looks before, in other towns, other jobs, looks that carried a weight of suspicion and rejection. They stirred memories of past slights, but he kept his worries to himself, not wanting to dim Laura's hope. One afternoon, Laura decided to take the initiative and introduce herself to Margaret. She crossed the street, Liam trailing behind her with a handful of his treasured pebbles. Margaret answered the door, her expression unreadable, her posture stiff. "Good afternoon," Laura said, her smile bright and unwavering. "I'm Laura Carter, your new neighbor. This is my son, Liam." Margaret nodded, her voice clipped and formal. "Margaret Hayes. I've lived here a long time." "It's lovely to meet you," Laura pressed on, undeterred by the cool reception. "We're so excited to be part of Greenhaven. Maybe you'd like to stop by sometime for a coffee?" Margaret's eyes flicked over Laura, then lingered briefly on Liam, who grinned shyly up at her. "Perhaps," she said, her tone suggesting it was unlikely. "I'm quite busy, you know." "Of course," Laura replied, keeping her smile intact. "Well, our door's always open if you change your mind." As they walked back to their house, Liam tugged at Laura's hand, his brow furrowed. "She didn't seem very happy to meet us, Mom." Laura sighed, ruffling his hair with a gentle hand. "Some people just take a little time to warm up, sweetheart. We'll keep being kind, and maybe she'll come around." But Margaret's frostiness lingered in Laura's mind, a quiet reminder that not everyone in Greenhaven saw their arrival as a cause for celebration. David felt it too, his instincts honed by years of navigating subtle prejudice. "She's set in her ways," he told Laura later that evening, his voice heavy with the weight of experience. "But we're not here to change her mind. We're here to build a life." Laura nodded, her resolve firm despite the unease. "We'll make this our home, David. No matter what it takes." The days passed, and the Carters continued to adjust to their new surroundings. Laura planned her lessons for the upcoming school year, her passion for teaching a steady anchor. David met with his new team at the police station, his calm authority earning cautious respect. Emily spent hours on her phone, her reluctance to embrace Greenhaven a barrier yet to be breached. Liam, meanwhile, explored every inch of the backyard, his imagination turning the space into a world of endless possibility. Greenhaven's beauty was undeniable, its tree-lined streets, its quiet charm, but its welcome remained uneven, a puzzle the Carters were determined to solve, piece by piece, together. 2 weeks after their arrival, the Carters decided to host a barbecue to forge connections with their new neighbors in Greenhaven. Laura, with her natural gift for hospitality, threw herself into the preparations with boundless enthusiasm. She crafted a menu designed to please every palate: juicy burgers, sizzling hot dogs, grilled corn and zucchini, colorful salads bursting with fresh flavors, and her signature peach cobbler, its sweet aroma wafting through the house as it baked. David took charge of the grill, inspecting it with the meticulous care of a man accustomed to high-stakes decisions. Emily, though she grumbled about the effort, spent hours designing vibrant invitations with markers, her teenage skepticism giving way to a flicker of excitement at the prospect of playing hostess. Liam, ever energetic, buzzed around the backyard, setting up a game area with beanbags, a soccer ball, and a small inflatable pool for younger children, his grin a beacon of joy. "We should invite everyone on the block," Laura said one evening over dinner, her eyes sparkling with determination. "Even the ones who've been a bit reserved. This is our chance to show we belong here." David nodded, though a knot of unease tightened in his chest. He had noticed the clipped greetings, the sidelong glances from neighbors like Margaret Hayes. They carried a familiar weight, one he had felt in other places, other times. "You're right," he said, his voice steady despite his reservations. "We'll open our home and let them see who we are." Laura and Emily went door to door delivering the invitations, Laura's warmth meeting a spectrum of responses. Thomas, the elderly widower, accepted with a hearty smile, promising to bring his famous mashed potatoes. The Patels, the Indian family from down the street, grinned and offered to contribute a tray of homemade samosas. But at Margaret's house, the reception was as cold as a winter morning. "A barbecue?" Margaret said, eyeing the colorful invitation without reaching for it, her voice dripping with disinterest. "I'm not sure that's my sort of thing." "We'd love to have you there," Laura said, her smile unwavering despite the rebuff. "It's just a casual get-together to meet everyone and celebrate David's new role as police chief." Margaret's lips pursed, her gaze flickering over Laura and Emily. "I'll think about it," she replied, her tone making it clear she had no intention of attending. She closed the door with a curt nod, leaving Laura and Emily standing on her pristine porch. Emily frowned as they walked back to their house, her brow furrowed. "Why's she so mean, Mom? It's just a barbecue." Laura sighed, placing a hand on her daughter's shoulder. "Some people aren't used to new faces, sweetheart. They need time. We'll keep trying to reach out." But the encounter left a sting, a quiet reminder that Greenhaven's welcome was not universal. Laura pushed the feeling aside, focusing on the preparations, determined to make the barbecue a success. The day of the barbecue dawned bright and clear, the Carters' backyard transformed into a festive haven. String lights twinkled above long tables laden with Laura's culinary creations, their colors vibrant against the green of the grass. A playlist of smooth jazz and soulful tunes hummed from a portable speaker, setting a relaxed and inviting tone. Neighbors began to arrive, their contributions adding to the feast, Thomas with his promised mashed potatoes, the Patels with a tray of golden samosas, and the Wilsons, a young couple from 2 doors down, with a pitcher of homemade lemonade. But many houses on the block remained shuttered, their absence a silent statement that Laura couldn't ignore, though she kept her smile firmly in place as she greeted each guest with warmth. Across the street, Margaret Hayes stood behind her lace curtains, her irritation swelling with every burst of laughter that drifted over from the Carters' yard. The music, the rich aroma of grilled meat, the diverse crowd, black, white, Asian, young, and old, grated on her nerves like sandpaper. To her, the barbecue was an act of defiance, a bold claim on a neighborhood she had spent decades shaping in her image. "They think they can just waltz in and take over," she hissed to herself, her fingers tightening around the phone resting on her side table. As the afternoon unfolded, the barbecue buzzed with life. David stood by the grill, flipping burgers and swapping stories with Thomas about Greenhaven's history, their easy banter drawing smiles from nearby guests. Laura moved through the crowd, her laughter infectious as she shared anecdotes about their move and listened to neighbors' tales of life in the town. Emily, initially hesitant, found herself leading a group of younger children in a beanbag toss game, her shyness melting away as she called out scores and cheered their efforts. Liam darted through the yard, organizing an impromptu soccer match with a handful of kids, his infectious grin sparking laughter and cheers. For a moment, the Carters felt the warmth of belonging, the sense that Greenhaven might truly become their home. But Margaret couldn't bear the scene unfolding before her. The sight of her neighbors, people she had known for years, mingling with these newcomers, laughing and eating as if the Carters had always been part of Greenhaven, felt like a betrayal of everything she held dear. Unable to contain her frustration any longer, she picked up her phone and dialed 911, her voice trembling with carefully crafted concern. "Hello, I'd like to report a disturbance," she said, her words measured to mask her true intent. "My new neighbors are being incredibly loud, there's shouting, music, and so many strangers in their yard. I'm worried it's not safe." The dispatcher asked a series of routine questions, and Margaret answered with precision, painting a picture of chaos and suspicion. She hinted at unusual behavior and emphasized that the family had just moved in, her tone implying that their newness was reason enough for concern. When she hung up, a twisted sense of satisfaction settled over her. She had taken a stand, she told herself, to protect Greenhaven from these interlopers who dared to disrupt its order. Back at the barbecue, the mood was golden, untouched by the storm brewing across the street. David bantered with Mr. Patel about cricket, their shared love of sports bridging cultural gaps and drawing chuckles from those nearby. Laura shared her cobbler recipe with Mrs. Wilson, who marveled at its sweetness and vowed to try it herself. The children's laughter rang out, blending with the music to create a symphony of joy that filled the backyard. It was everything the Carters had hoped for, a step toward building a community, a foundation for their new life in Greenhaven. Then, the sharp wail of a police siren cut through the air, shattering the harmony like glass. David froze, his years in law enforcement snapping him to attention. He set down his tongs, his eyes narrowing as he scanned the crowd for the source of the sound. Laura, in the middle of pouring lemonade for a guest, caught his gaze, her heart leaping into her throat. "David, is that?" she whispered, her voice trembling with sudden dread. "I'll handle it," he said, his tone calm but firm as he strode toward the front of the yard. The chatter died down, replaced by a tense silence as guests turned their attention to the approaching sound. Emily and Liam abandoned their games and ran to Laura's side, their faces etched with confusion and worry. Two police officers appeared at the gate, their expressions neutral but alert. The younger officer, a rookie named Jenkins, hesitated as he recognized David, his eyes widening slightly. "Chief Carter," he said, his voice tinged with surprise. "We, got a call about a disturbance here, noise complaints and some reports of suspicious activity." David's jaw clenched, a surge of anger and disappointment rising within him like a tide. He knew this wasn't a simple misunderstanding, it was deliberate, a targeted act meant to undermine his family's place in Greenhaven. "I see," he said, his voice measured despite the storm brewing inside. "As you can tell, we're just hosting a barbecue with our neighbors. There's nothing suspicious going on here." The older officer, a veteran named Thompson, nodded, his discomfort evident. "We'll just take a quick look around, sir," he said, his tone apologetic. "It's standard procedure." "Go right ahead," David replied, stepping aside with a calm that belied the frustration churning within him. The officers walked through the backyard, their eyes scanning the tables piled high with food, the games in progress, the faces of guests now tinged with unease. The crowd watched in silence, the joy of the afternoon tainted by the unexpected intrusion. Laura gripped David's hand tightly, her voice barely a whisper. "Someone did this to us, David. Someone called the police on our family." "I know," he murmured, his arm wrapping around her protectively, his eyes never leaving the officers as they moved through the yard. "But we'll get through this, Laura. We always do." Across the street, Margaret stood at her window, her heart pounding with anticipation. She had expected a scene, flashing lights, raised voices, perhaps even handcuffs, a clear message that the Carters didn't belong in her neighborhood. But as she watched the officers speak calmly with David, her excitement began to curdle into confusion. Why weren't they doing anything? The scene was nothing like the confrontation she had envisioned, and a flicker of unease crept into her chest, unsettling her carefully laid plans. The officers completed their brief inspection and returned to David, the younger one shifting uncomfortably. "Everything looks fine here, Chief," Jenkins said, his voice laced with embarrassment. "We're sorry for the interruption. It must have been some kind of mix-up." "No trouble at all," David said, his tone polite but edged with a quiet resolve that spoke volumes. "Have a safe night, officers." As the police car pulled away, the backyard seemed to exhale, but the warmth of the earlier festivities had dissipated like smoke. Conversations resumed, but they were quieter now, more subdued, the laughter tinged with a hint of caution. Laura leaned into David, fighting back the tears that threatened to spill over. "I can't believe someone would call the police on us," she murmured, the hurt raw in her voice, cutting through the evening air. "I can," David said softly, pulling her close, his chin resting on her head as he held her tightly. "But we're still here, Laura. We're not going anywhere." Emily and Liam approached, their eyes wide with questions they didn't know how to ask. "Dad, why were the police here?" Liam asked, his voice small and uncertain, his usual brightness dimmed. David knelt down to his son's level, forcing a reassuring smile despite the weight in his chest. "It's okay, buddy," he said. "Someone made a mistake, and the police just came to check things out. Everything's fine now." "But why would someone do that?" Emily pressed, her young mind grappling with the injustice, her voice sharp with frustration. David sighed, wishing he could shield his children from the complexities of the world for just a little longer. "Sometimes people get scared of things they don't understand," he said carefully. "And when they're scared, they make bad decisions. But the important thing is that we're all safe, and nothing bad happened." The children nodded, not fully convinced but trusting their father's words. Laura bent down and kissed their foreheads, her voice gentle. "Why don't you two go play with your friends?" she said. "Everything's okay now." The kids hesitated for a moment, then ran off to rejoin the other children, though they kept glancing back at their parents, still trying to make sense of the strange interruption. As the barbecue continued, the Carters moved through the crowd, thanking their guests and keeping their smiles in place, though the sting of the encounter lingered like a bruise beneath the surface. Thomas, the elderly neighbor, lingered as others began to leave, his expression one of quiet sympathy. "You're good folks," he said, his voice warm but tinged with sadness. "Don't let this get you down. Greenhaven's better with you here." "Thank you, Thomas," Laura replied, her voice steady despite the ache in her chest. "We're not going anywhere." As the last guests departed, the Carters began cleaning up, the remnants of the barbecue scattered across the yard, empty plates, crumpled napkins, the faint smell of grilled food lingering in the air. David and Laura worked in silence for a while, each lost in their thoughts, the weight of the evening settling over them like a heavy fog. Finally, they sat on the porch, the stars twinkling above in a sky now deep indigo. "What a night," Laura said softly, breaking the silence, her voice carrying a mix of exhaustion and resolve. David took her hand, his grip firm and grounding. "It's just the beginning, Laura," he said. "But we're stronger than this. We always have been." She nodded, leaning against him, the quiet of the night wrapping them in a fragile but enduring hope. They knew the road ahead would be challenging, that Greenhaven held more obstacles than open arms. But they also knew they had each other, and that was enough to face whatever came next. The barbecue left an indelible mark on the Carters, a stark reminder that Greenhaven was not yet their home. Emily grew quieter in the days that followed, her usual teenage bravado dimmed by the sting of rejection she sensed but couldn't fully articulate. Liam asked endless questions about why the police had come, his innocence bruised by the confusion of that evening. Laura threw herself into her preparations for the new school year, finding solace in the eager faces of her students, while David buried himself in his work at the police station, determined to prove his worth as chief and to carve out a place for his family in this town. But neither of them could shake the feeling that they were being watched, judged, their every move weighed against an unspoken standard. One evening, as the family gathered around the dinner table, Laura's eyes lit up with a sudden spark of inspiration. "What if we did something for the whole neighborhood?" she said, her voice brimming with excitement. "Something that brings everyone together, not just us hosting a party that some people might misunderstand." David raised an eyebrow, intrigued by her enthusiasm. "Like what, Laura?" "A community garden," she said, the words tumbling out with conviction. "A place where people can grow vegetables, flowers, herbs, whatever they want. It's a neutral space, a project that everyone can share in, no matter who they are." Emily perked up, her sullenness fading for the first time in days. "Can I plant sunflowers? They're my favorite." Liam grinned, bouncing in his seat with excitement. "I want tomatoes. And maybe pumpkins for Halloween." David smiled, the tension in his shoulders easing as he looked at his family. "A garden, huh? That's a big idea, Laura. I like it." They named the project the Hope Garden, a symbol of growth and unity in a place that desperately needed both. The Carters wasted no time, pitching the idea to the Greenhaven Neighborhood Association at their next meeting. Laura stood before the gathered residents, her passion infectious as she outlined the benefits: fresh produce, a space for connection, a chance to beautify the town. David stood beside her, his quiet authority reinforcing her words, his presence a reminder of his commitment to the community. Most of the residents were intrigued by the proposal. Thomas, the widower, offered to donate gardening tools from his shed, his enthusiasm immediate. The Patels suggested including an herb section, their knowledge of spices adding a new dimension to the plan. The Wilsons, the young couple, volunteered to help clear the land, eager to contribute. But Margaret Hayes, seated at the back of the room, scoffed audibly, her arms crossed tightly. "A garden," she said, her voice sharp with disdain. "Sounds like a lot of mess and trouble for nothing." Laura kept her composure, her smile unwavering despite the jab. "It's a chance for us all to work together, Mrs. Hayes," she said kindly. "We'd love your input. Maybe there's a flower you're fond of that we could include in the plans?" Margaret's lips pursed, her eyes narrowing. "I'll pass," she said, her tone final, but the majority of the room voted in favor, and the Hope Garden was officially approved. The Carters secured a vacant lot near the community park, a patchy square of earth that seemed to yearn for transformation. Work began the following weekend, with volunteers arriving to clear weeds, haul soil, and construct raised garden beds. David coordinated the logistics with the precision of a seasoned leader, ensuring every task was accounted for. Laura organized planting days, her warmth drawing even the shyest neighbors into the fold, her laughter a beacon of encouragement. Emily and Liam joined in eagerly, learning to sow seeds and water sprouts, their enthusiasm contagious among the other children who came to help. Margaret watched from a distance, her resentment simmering like a pot left too long on the stove. She whispered to other longtime residents, like Mrs. Clarkson, a widow with a sharp tongue and a skeptical eye. "They're trying to take over, mark my words," Margaret said over coffee one morning, her voice low and conspiratorial. "This garden is just a stunt to make themselves look good." Mrs. Clarkson nodded, her own doubts mirroring Margaret's. "It's a bit much, isn't it?" she said. "All this fuss for some dirt and plants." But Margaret's words found less traction than she had hoped as the garden began to take shape. The first planting day was a triumph. Neighbors of all ages worked side by side, their chatter filling the air with a sense of shared purpose. Thomas showed Liam how to space tomato seedlings, his patience endless as the boy peppered him with questions. Mrs. Patel taught Emily about the nuances of growing basil, her gentle instruction sparking the girls' curiosity and pride. Even the Wilsons, who had been reserved at the barbecue, showed up with shovels, their laughter mingling with the groups as they dug into the earth. The Carters moved among them, their gratitude evident in every smile, every word of thanks. Laura caught David's eye across the garden, a silent acknowledgement passing between them. This was working. The Hope Garden was more than just soil and seeds, it was a bridge, a way to connect Greenhaven's fractured pieces, to build something lasting. But not everyone was ready to cross that bridge. Margaret stayed away, her absence a conspicuous void among the volunteers. Laura, undeterred, left a flyer on her doorstep, inviting her to join the next workday with a handwritten note, "We'd love to see you there." She held on to hope, though doubt crept into her thoughts. "She'll come around," Laura told David one evening, her voice tinged with uncertainty.
David, his perspective shaped by years of facing resistance, wasn't so optimistic. "People like her don't change overnight," he said, his tone heavy with experience. "But we'll keep the door open, Laura. That's all we can do." As summer faded into fall, the Hope Garden flourished, its bounty a testament to the community's efforts. Zucchinis swelled on their vines, roses bloomed in vibrant hues of red and pink, and herbs filled the air with their fragrant promise. The Carters planned a harvest festival to celebrate the garden's success, envisioning a day of booths showcasing fresh produce, homemade jams, and children's games to bring Greenhaven together once more. Neighbors signed up eagerly, their excitement palpable, the buzz of anticipation spreading through the town like wildfire. The festival day arrived crisp and clear, the park transformed into a vibrant marketplace that pulsed with life. Long tables lined the grass, laden with the garden's bounty, golden ears of corn, ruby-red tomatoes, jars of honey from a local beekeeper who had joined the effort. A local folk band played lively tunes, children raced through a maze of hay bales, and laughter soared above it all, a melody of unity. David and Laura walked hand in hand through the crowd, greeting everyone, their hearts swelling with pride at what they had helped create. Thomas, manning a vegetable stand, beamed at them, his eyes twinkling. "You've done something special here, Carters," he said. "Greenhaven's lucky to have you." Then, in a moment that caught Laura by surprise, Margaret appeared at the edge of the festival, hesitant, clutching a small jar of strawberry jam in her hands. She approached Laura, her voice low and uncertain, almost lost in the hum of the crowd. "I made this from my own berries," she said, holding out the jar. "I thought it might fit with the festival." Laura's eyes widened, but her smile was warm and genuine as she accepted the offering. "It's perfect, Mrs. Hayes," she said, her voice filled with gratitude. thank you so much for bringing it." Margaret nodded, her usual stiffness softened by the warmth of the day. She lingered awkwardly for a moment before joining a group of neighbors by the flower beds, her presence a small but significant step toward reconciliation. David squeezed Laura's hand, his voice a whisper in her ear. "That's a start, Laura. A real start." The festival stretched into the evening, the sky deepening to a rich indigo as neighbors lingered, swapping stories, sharing food, and building bonds that felt stronger with every passing moment. The Carters stood together at the edge of the park, watching the scene unfold, a quiet satisfaction settling over them like a warm blanket. The Hope Garden had taken root, not just in the earth, but in the heart of Greenhaven, a symbol of what was possible when people chose connection over division. The Harvest Festival marked a turning point for Greenhaven, but change was not a straight path. In the weeks that followed, the Carters felt a subtle shift. Neighbors who had once avoided them now offered tentative waves, their smiles cautious but growing warmer. Emily found her place at school, joining the art club where her bold sketches of sunflowers and cityscapes earned quiet praise from her peers. Liam signed up for a local soccer team, his shy grin becoming a fixture on the field as his teammates cheered his every goal. Laura's classroom buzzed with energy, her students planting seedlings for the Hope Garden as part of a science project, their enthusiasm a balm for her soul. David, meanwhile, earned increasing respect at the police station, his fairness and steady leadership winning over even the most skeptical officers who had initially questioned his appointment. But Margaret's jar of jam, though a significant gesture, did not erase the deeper tensions that lingered in Greenhaven. She began attending garden workdays, her presence hesitant at first, her hands working the soil in silence. Yet she kept her distance from the Carters, her old prejudices wrestling with a growing curiosity about the community taking shape around her. Other residents, like Mrs. Clarkson, a longtime Greenhaven widow with a sharp tongue, remained wary, their polite nods masking unease. Whispers circulated about the garden's cost, about why newcomers were leading such a prominent project, their words vague but pointed. One afternoon, a dispute erupted in the garden, bringing these tensions to the surface. Mrs. Clarkson claimed the sunniest corner plot for her prized roses, arguing that her decades in Greenhaven gave her precedence. Mr. Patel, who had planted a thriving row of chili peppers in the same spot, protested, his frustration spilling over into sharp words. Voices rose, drawing a crowd of volunteers who watched with growing unease. David, sensing the potential for division, stepped in, his presence calming the chaos like a steady hand on a stormy sea. "This garden belongs to all of us," he said, his voice firm but fair, cutting through the tension. "Let's rotate plots each season, it gives everyone a chance at the best spots." Mrs. Clarkson huffed, her arms crossed tightly, but Mr. Patel nodded, his shoulders relaxing as he saw the wisdom in the compromise. The solution held, but the incident underscored the work still needed to unify Greenhaven. David and Laura decided to hold regular open forums after garden workdays, inviting neighbors to air their concerns and ideas. Some spoke of practical issues, watering schedules, shortages of tools, while others hinted at discomfort with the town's changing dynamics. "It's not the same Greenhaven anymore," one older resident said, his words heavy with nostalgia but laced with something sharper. Laura listened to each voice with empathy, her teacher's heart attuned to the unspoken. "Change can be hard," she said during one forum, her voice steady and inclusive. "But it's also a chance to grow something better, together. The garden is proof of that." Margaret attended one of these forums, sitting quietly at the back, her expression unreadable. Afterward, Laura took a chance and invited her for tea, sensing an opportunity to build a bridge. Over steaming cups in the Carters' cozy kitchen, Margaret opened up, her voice halting but honest. "I've always been protective of Greenhaven," she admitted, her eyes fixed on the table. "It's all I've known for 40 years. But maybe I've been too rigid, holding on to things that don't matter as much as I thought." Laura reached across the table, her touch gentle. "You're part of this now, Margaret," she said. "We're all learning together, and there's room for everyone." Margaret nodded, her eyes softer than Laura had ever seen, a flicker of vulnerability breaking through her usual armor. Winter brought new challenges to the Hope Garden, as frost threatened the delicate crops that had flourished through the summer. The Carters rallied volunteers to build a small greenhouse to protect the plants, securing donations from local businesses to cover the costs. Thomas sourced lumber from his contacts, his generosity unwavering. The Patels organized a bake sale to raise additional funds, their children handing out flyers with infectious enthusiasm. Even Mrs. Clarkson, who had been one of the garden's skeptics, contributed a packet of heirloom seeds from her own collection, her gesture small but telling. Margaret, to everyone's surprise, donated a stack of old ceramic pots she had stored in her garage, her contribution quiet but significant, a sign of her slow but steady shift. When spring arrived, the garden burst forth with renewed vigor, its colors a vibrant testament to Greenhaven's resilience. Emily led a school fundraiser to purchase new gardening tools, her confidence blooming alongside the sunflowers she had planted months earlier. Liam, ever patient, taught younger children how to plant carrots and lettuce, his quiet leadership a reflection of his father's steady presence. The Carters watched their children thrive, their pride tempered by the knowledge that Greenhaven's transformation was still a work in progress. Small conflicts continued to arise, a stolen harvest of tomatoes sparked accusations, a disagreement over compost methods led to heated words, but the garden provided a space for dialogue. David and Laura mediated when needed, their fairness earning trust. The Patels hosted a Diwali celebration, inviting the entire neighborhood to share in the Festival of Lights, their home glowing with lanterns and the scent of spiced sweets. Margaret attended, her smile tentative but genuine, a far cry from the woman who had once watched the Carters with disdain. Mrs. Clarkson, too, began to soften, bringing a homemade pie to the event, her usual grumbling replaced by cautious warmth. The Hope Garden became Greenhaven's heartbeat, a place where differences were set aside in favor of shared purpose.
David and Laura worked tirelessly, organizing workdays, teaching workshops on planting techniques, and listening to every voice that sought to be heard. They knew pockets of resistance still lingered, neighbors who clung to old ways, whispers that questioned their place, but the garden stood as proof that unity could take root, given time and care. One evening, as the family walked through the garden, Emily paused by her sunflowers, their golden petals towering above her. "I didn't think I'd like it here," she admitted, her voice soft. "But this feels like ours." Laura hugged her, tears pricking her eyes. "It is ours," she said. "And it's theirs, too. That's what makes it special." David nodded, his arm around Liam, who clutched a small tomato he'd grown. "We're building something," he said. "Not just a garden, but a home." By the second summer, the Hope Garden was the soul of Greenhaven, its roots deep and its reach wide. A farmer's market sprang up, with booths showcasing the garden's vegetables, handmade crafts, and, to everyone's delight, Margaret's strawberry jam, which had become a local favorite, sold out within hours at every event. Festivals became cherished traditions, spring planting days filled with laughter, fall harvests brimming with bounty, winter light displays glowing in the greenhouse. The Carters remained at the heart of these efforts, their vision guiding the garden's growth, but the community had taken ownership, each neighbor adding their unique touch to the tapestry of Greenhaven. Margaret's transformation was profound, her once cold demeanor replaced by a warmth that surprised even herself. She took on the role of mentoring new gardeners, her knowledge of roses and perennials a gift she shared freely, her laughter now a common sound among the flower beds. At a town hall meeting, she stood before her neighbors, her voice steady and clear, a far cry from the woman who had once whispered doubts. "I was wrong about the Carters," she said, her eyes sweeping the room, meeting theirs with sincerity. "They've shown us what community really means, not holding on to the past, but building a future where we all have a place." The room erupted in applause, David and Laura exchanging a glance of quiet pride. Margaret's words were not just an apology, they were a promise, one that Greenhaven embraced with open hearts. Emily and Liam grew into their roles as young ambassadors of the garden spirit. Emily's artwork adorned the garden signs, her murals of sunflowers, tomatoes, and vibrant herbs turning the space into a living canvas that drew visitors from neighboring towns. Liam organized a children's gardening club, teaching his peers how to nurture seedlings with care, his once shy grin now a beacon of confidence that inspired others. Their experiences in Greenhaven shaped them, teaching them resilience, empathy, and the power of standing firm in the face of adversity. The garden became a hub for new events, a summer solstice party with music and dancing under the stars, a poetry reading beneath the ancient oaks that bordered the park, a workshop on sustainable planting led by a local botanist. Businesses sponsored tools and supplies, schools integrated the garden into their curricula, and Greenhaven became a model for community projects in nearby towns. David and Laura were invited to speak at regional conferences, sharing their story of the Hope Garden, their humility grounding every word they spoke, their message one of hope and perseverance. But they never forgot the challenges that had brought them to this point. David often thought back to the barbecue, the wail of the police siren echoing in his memory like a warning. "We could have walked away," he told Laura one evening as they walked through the garden, the stars twinkling above, casting a soft glow on the rows of blooming flowers. "It would have been easier to leave, to find somewhere else. But we stayed. And look at what we've built." Laura leaned against him, her voice soft but filled with conviction. "Not just us, David," she said. "Everyone. This isn't our garden anymore, it's theirs, too. That's what makes it so powerful." He nodded, his heart full, his arm tightening around her. "This is home," he said simply, the word carrying the weight of their journey. Greenhaven had changed, its prejudices fading like morning mist under the warmth of a new day. The Hope Garden stood as proof that unity could grow anywhere, if given care, patience, and a willingness to listen. The Carters had sown the seeds, and Greenhaven had blossomed into a community where every voice was heard, every difference celebrated, every heart welcomed. Years later, the garden remained a cornerstone of Greenhaven's identity, its rows of vegetables and flowers a living testament to what had been achieved. Margaret, now a beloved elder, taught Emily the secrets of her jam recipe, their bond a quiet triumph over the past. Thomas, frilier but still smiling, tended his tomatoes with Liam's help, their laughter a melody of friendship across generations. The Patels expanded their herb plot, their spices flavoring the shared meals that brought neighbors together. Mrs. Clarkson, once a skeptic, hosted a knitting circle by the greenhouse, her sharp edges softened by the community she had come to embrace. One evening, as a new festival unfolded in the park, David and Laura stood together, watching children dance, neighbors swap stories, and the garden glow under strings of twinkling lights. "We did it," Laura whispered, her eyes glistening with pride and gratitude. David pulled her close, his voice steady and sure. "We all did," he said, his arm around her, his gaze sweeping over the vibrant scene before them. The Hope Garden was more than earth and roots, it was a testament to the power of choosing understanding over fear, connection over division, love over hate. The Carters had faced hostility with grace, resilience, and an unwavering belief in the possibility of change. In doing so, they had helped Greenhaven grow into a place where everyone belonged, a true home for all who called it theirs.